such a great time.
Mom? Dad?
I don't remember the last time I've had the house to myself over the holiday.
Kevin! Kevin!
Home Alone is one of the most iconic Christmas movies of all time, and Macaulay Culkin's portrayal of Kevin McAllister made him a household name. The first two films were massive hits, leaving fans to wonder, why wasn't Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 3? Today, we're diving into the story behind his absence, breaking down the reasons, and exploring how it shaped his career and the Home Alone franchise. Stick around to find out why Home Alone 3 wasn't the sequel fans expected. Let's start with the biggest reason. Macaulay Culkin retired from acting in 1994 at the age of 14. After skyrocketing to fame as one of the most successful child actors of all time, Culkin decided to step away from the spotlight. Why? It all boiled down to burnout and wanting a normal life. By the time he was just 10 years old, Culkin was already one of the busiest actors in Hollywood, starring in films like My Girl, the Good Son, and Richie Rich. While these movies brought him incredible fame, the pressure of being constantly in demand took its toll. In interviews, Culkin has mentioned that his grueling schedule as a child star left little room for just being a kid. Imagine spending your formative years not in school or with friends, but on movie sets.
You were lost in New York?
Yes, I do work at 4 a.m. as a 10-year-old. It was great. It was my favorite day as a child.
Constantly under the scrutiny of directors, producers, and the media. By the mid-90s, Culkin was ready to take a break from Hollywood entirely. In a later interview, he candidly described his decision to step back as a way to reclaim his childhood. This decision wasn't just about Home Alone, it was about taking control of his life. By the time Home Alone 3 began production, Culkin had been out of the acting world for a few years. Returning to the franchise was never on the table for him at that point. Another major factor was the creative direction of Home Alone 3. Unlike the first two films, Home Alone 3 wasn't a continuation of Kevin McAllister's story. The producers decided to reboot the series with a completely new cast and a new protagonist, Alex Pruitt, played by Alex D. Linz. So why the reboot? By 1997, the Home Alone brand wasn't the cultural phenomenon it had been in the early 90s. While Home Alone 2 had been a commercial success, critics had started to grow tired of the formula, calling it a rehash of the original. Producers likely believed a fresh start would bring new energy to the franchise, appealing to a younger audience who may not have been old enough to remember the first two films. This decision meant that even if Macaulay Culkin had been willing to return, there wouldn't have been a role for him. The reboot introduced an entirely different setup, a kid battling spies instead of burglars, and lacked the familiar charm of the McAllister family dynamics. Now, let me ask you, do you think this reboot was a good idea? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, I think the charm of the original films came from Kevin and his family. A reboot without that dynamic felt like a missed opportunity. But let's get back to Macaulay Culkin's absence. His age was also a significant factor. By the time Home Alone 3 came out, he was 16 years old, far older than the character of Kevin McAllister, who was written to be around 8 years old. Even if the story had continued with Kevin, it would have been tough to recreate the magic of a kid outsmarting burglars. Sequels often face the challenge of capturing lightning in a bottle twice, and as much as we love the Home Alone series, it's hard to say whether a teenage Kevin would have had the same impact. Imagine a version of Home Alone 3 where Kevin is a teenager. Would it have been as endearing, or would it have felt forced? It's a question that fans have debated for years. By the mid-90s, the Home Alone brand wasn't what it used to be. After the success of Home Alone 2, the franchise saw diminishing returns. Even though Home Alone 3 introduced a new story, it didn't have the same charm, and fans weren't as invested without Kevin McAllister at the center. It's worth noting that Home Alone 3 wasn't a total failure, it just didn't live up to the legacy of its predecessors. It earned a modest box office and had a decent reception among younger viewers, but without Macaulay Culkin, it felt more like a spin-off than a true sequel. Looking back, many fans consider Home Alone 1 and 2 as the definitive parts of the franchise, with Home Alone 3 being more of an outlier. But what about Macaulay Culkin himself? Stepping away from acting wasn't the end of his story, it was the beginning of a new chapter. In the years since his departure from Hollywood, Culkin has explored various creative outlets, from his band The Pizza Underground, to his comedic work on podcasts and YouTube. He's proven that there's more to his legacy than just Kevin McAllister. Culkin has also spoken openly about the challenges of fame, offering insights into the pressures of being a child star and why stepping away was the healthiest choice for him. Today, he's a pop culture icon, and while he'll always be remembered as Kevin, he's also shown the world that there's life beyond Home Alone. So, there you have it, the reasons why Macaulay Culkin didn't star in Home Alone 3. It was a mix of personal choices, creative changes, and the realities of growing up as a child star. But even without a third film, Culkin's legacy as Kevin McAllister is cemented in pop culture history. What do you think? Would you have liked to see Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 3? Or do you think the series should have stopped at 2 movies? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the stories behind your favorite films.